Hello. This has been something that has been on my mind to share for a while now, and I have been told by a few friends that I've told this to that people need to hear this. And I don't know if people need to hear this or not, but if someone says people need to hear this, then I assume people need to hear this. And there's more than just one person. And this is a PSA that I had made a while ago to new parents or parents to be, especially for I wrote this during the first 3 months, during the fourth trimester, as some would call it, of my after my baby was born, when my life got flipped upside down, and there were so many things I didn't prepare for, and then there were other things I over prepared for. And when let's just say when that first day that she came into my life, I remember the first thought. The day after spending 24 hours with her, my first thought was, nobody should become parents who don't really, really, really want to. And at the end of this little PSA, I think you will understand what I mean by that. It can be the greatest joy to be a parent. I mean, I'm only 10 months in, so who knows? I may change my mind. I hope not. However, only if you really, really want it. Okay. So I have 5 things. This is, my notes are over here. I have 5 things that I remember journaling on and writing down as like, these are the things I wish I knew, and these are things I wish other parents knew. And the first one, which may be the most important one. So if I only had one thing to say, it would be this one. And that is, there is no one right way to do anything. And every way can be right sometimes. So out of all the parenting books, philosophies, and I read like over 15 books. I was, because I'm a little insane. And I followed a bunch of blogs, and every single one of them, I found a little bit that made sense to me, a little bit that served me. And I took a little bit, pretty much every single thing. And I've read gentle parenting, attachment parenting, sleep training. I read about sleep training, co-sleeping, breastfeeding, just fed is best, right? I read all of it, and I agreed with every single one of them. Imagine that. I took, like, if there was even, I have something that I realize, not everybody has. And I think this is why I'm so receptive to a lot of, like how-to and self-help stuff. And that is, when I read anything or watch anything or hear anything, if there's even like 1% of what this person said that resonates with me, that I agree with, or I think, oh, maybe this can serve me, I haven't heard it, said that way before, I will be like, okay, I'm going to take that 1%. And the 99% could be utter crap, or something that just really triggers me or offends me. And maybe it actually is crap, or maybe I'm just not ready to hear it yet. I don't know. And I don't care. I ignore, like, it's like that 99% just kind of like, it doesn't really get integrated into my brain. And I've been told sometimes that, I kind of have a terrible memory. And I think that's why I can selectively only hear what I think serves me in that moment. And it's a blessing and a curse. But in this case, this is the reason why I'm able to, I think, listen to so many people's advice. And yes, a lot of it rubs me the wrong way. But again, that 1% that does resonate, I always take it and try to integrate it into whatever is my framework for, how to function, in a certain context. And that framework always evolves, right? As I grow as well. And yet, I never, ever, ever agree with 100% of what anyone, book or person or source is saying. So I take 1%, at least 1% from almost everything, and 100% from nothing. And that is why even when things contradict each other, and I do not care about who's right, especially during that first month when all I'm trying to do is survive, Before baby came, yeah, I may have had my own, ideal parenting philosophy that I admit was just an ideal. After baby came, I didn't give any shit. I'm so sorry. I didn't give a shit. Excuse my language, about who's right. All I cared about was how do I get through the day and make sure, my baby and I are still healthy and alive. I mean, you really are kind of in animal survival mode. Anyway, sorry, that's a separate point. I am jumping ahead of myself. So I don't care about who is right. I only care about what works for me and my baby and leave the rest. I have no, I tossed away kind of all preconceptions on how my baby or I should be. And I was just constantly just responding to her. And she was a different baby every single day. I mean, your baby in the first few weeks, they are a different baby every single day because they're changing and they're learning so much. And that learning curve does slow down. So she's not a different baby every day, but she is kind of still a different baby every week. But in those first days, it's such a great skill to just be able to respond, collect, gather a lot of information, and being able to select which tool, which thing to use at that current situation. So I have absolutely, I'm sure there's some things I do have, like all or nothing opinions about, like blanket opinions about. I'm sure I have that, because it's a very human thing to have blanket opinions about things. It conserves our energy, so we don't have to think too hard about, contextual stuff. But for the most part, I don't think that I have that much. The only thing I stubbornly hold to be true is that you should always do what works for you and your baby. Whether that's breastfeeding, whether that's bottle feeding, whether that is co-sleeping, bed sharing, whether that's sleep training. Because some babies are ready for that, some babies are not. Some babies are ready for it sometimes at some point in their season, and then they stop being receptive to that and they want something else, just like people. And that's so that's something that would be the first thing, is that there's no one right way to do anything, and that every way can be the right way sometimes. Because if you subscribe to one way of doing something, and you have to be 100% check every single box on that way, I don't know of any parent who's actually able to do that. Like, I've read books where people say that, like, this is what you do. But that books are all, keep in mind, books are always talking to the general populace. It is never like a one-on-one conversation. In one-on-one settings, and I hope I learn more as I interview more people, that in one-on-one settings, I have never heard anybody follow 100% of any parenting philosophy or paradigm. And it doesn't make sense to me that works, right? So I think all books are valuable, and no book is 100% correct, because we are humans. Okay, number 2, you'll eventually realize that 80% of your frustrations, fights, and problems are all due to lack of sleep. Oh my God, I remember this. This actually isn't mine. I read it from Reddit. Some mom on Reddit said this, and I was like, oh, that actually blew my mind when I heard it. When you feel rested again, and you will feel rested again, I promise you, if you are a parent that is in like that first 3 months zone, and you can't sleep at all, you will feel rested again. I promise you. When you feel rested again, most problems stop mattering as much as you had thought. And it does not mean that the problems you have right now are not valid. It does not mean you should not be feeling any certain way about whatever your problems are, or whatever, just whatever frustration you have. I always say feelings are like farts. If you hold in your fart, it's just going to get worse anyway. So the best thing to do is to let it out. There are obvious healthy ways of letting it out. You can choose the way you want to let it out. You can choose to, oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. For this example, you can choose to fart in someone's face, and that's rude, right? So, if you lash out, in a moment of rage, right? That may not be the best way to express your feeling, but, you can let the fart out in private. And the thing with farts is that they are always legit. They are always valid. And they also can tell you valuable information about yourself. And they are in alert, like, about what you ate. And they're also in alert system, right? Just to tell you, hey, maybe something's wrong, or, you feel this way, right? So anyway, feelings are like farts. Okay. I had no idea I was going to talk about that. But when you realize that 80%, and actually now I would update this. Back then I said 80%. Now I would think, honestly, I think like 95% of all my problems were due to lack of sleep. And that is legit, because when you don't get sleep, your brain goes into survival mode. It goes into animal, reptile mode, not human conscious mode, right? And again, that's okay. And just knowing, I think just knowing, when I read that comment, just knowing that even though my problems seem incredibly real and almost like life or death situation, like baby is crying, screaming, I've been holding her for an hour and she won't go to sleep, like that. Well, actually my problems were mostly breastfeeding. Oh God, if I had to rank my problems, it was number 1, breastfeeding, number 2, sleep. Those are pretty much it. I think poop would be the digestion issue, gas, right? That would be the third one. Okay. Separate video. Sorry for tangents. When I realized that it was mostly sleep, just knowing that made me feel so much better. It made my emotional reaction to things a lot better. I was still angry and upset and scared and all of that when shit hit the fan. But I was like, okay, this is just another one of those. I just have a big fart, and I'm sure my baby will actually be alive. Like, and sometimes I like to think, like, if I believe, I believe I was going to be able to be well rested within a few months, but let's say I don't actually believe that. And I believe it may take a year for me to be well rested, or hell, maybe 5 years, right? Certainly by the time my baby is like 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, right? They will be able to sleep, and then I can sleep through the night. So I will be rested at some point, and then I will be able to see things more clearly. And as long as I know it is going to be over, it doesn't matter how many years, that just makes things a lot better. And, okay. So, and this is hard to do during like the first 1, 2, 3 months, maybe, but now, mostly my baby, my baby does sleep through the night most of the time. There are regressions, of course. And when that happens and I don't get enough sleep and I start getting really ornery, frustrated, by many things, if I can help it, I try to write down what I'm frustrated about and then wait until I am able to get some more sleep before I go back and ask myself, is this still a problem? And most of the time it is not. It is not a problem. Okay. Number 3. Okay. Unless you grew up in a large family and spent years observing baby care, like where you see your family and your extended families and people actually caring for babies and raising children, right? And that is probably not the case if you grew up in Western culture like I did. Parenting newborns will not feel intuitive. I am not saying that parenting is not intuitive. We were evolved to procreate, and help our children also procreate, and pass on our DNA. I'm sure there is some intuition there, but intuition, although that is more instinct than intuition, but I don't want to get pedantic about semantics here. What I will say is, yes, we do have some of that instincts, right? Mothers especially, but also fathers do have some parental instincts as well. But intuition is built through experience. It is built through us subconsciously collecting all the data of examples of things, so that in the moment where we are in survival mode, baby is doing something, that crazy, or something that, makes us feel triggered, or we can make a snap decision on what to do based on all that subconscious data that we've been collecting, rather than having to logically think through stuff. However, if you never had those examples around you, you won't be as intuitive about what to do as somebody who was brought up in a culture where they were surrounded by extended families and babies. To me, that makes logical sense. And so it doesn't mean you don't have the ability to also develop your intuition more with experience, but here's why I say this. Do not put so much pressure on yourself that you just should know how to do things. Go ahead and ask stupid questions. And this is where I catch, so there's like two spectrums of parents that I see doing this. And I definitely do see this happen more with moms than with dads. And maybe it's just, there's more pressure, right? Put on the mother's side, right? To do things right. But on one end of the spectrum are the moms who feel guilty because they don't know how to respond to things. They don't have that intuition about exactly what to do. And then they just feel bad for themselves. And then when they try to do something and it doesn't work out, they beat themselves up. On the other side are the parents who I would say they almost like don't give their intuition even a chance at all. And they only follow what experts say. And if they don't have number one down, they fall into the trap of following 100% of what one book or one expert or one philosophy says. And because it's impossible to check every single box, they beat themselves up because they can't, it doesn't work, right? So we want to be in the happy middle. I try my best to stay in the happy middle and remind myself that there is some things that are instinctual, but not everything is intuitive if I never saw them. And I think my intuition has gotten a lot better and I trust it so much more now. But that's because I have examples. I collected examples by asking friends and my, people in my family with kids, their experiences. But mostly I got example just from practicing with my own baby. I know my baby very well now. And she's still a different baby every week. So I still have to learn, but I'm a lot more confident because I've been collecting data just from interacting with her. But, yeah. Don't beat yourself up if you don't intuitively know what to do, especially when it came to breastfeeding. Oh my God. Actually, I have been warned that breastfeeding was hard, but I had no idea that breastfeeding would be one of the hardest things I would ever have to learn and teach my baby how to learn. I had no idea that was going to be one of the hardest things I would ever have to do in my life. Okay. Number 4. This applies to those of you who have a co-parent, right? Whether that's your spouse or domestic partner or an allo parent, right? Somebody who you co-parent with. Agree on the rules and schedules with your partner and then commit to them. That doesn't mean you can't change it, but like give it a chance and commit to those rules. Don't keep score. Don't try to do 50-50 on everything. That is a recipe for resentment and also burnout. Instead, I recommend 100 on specific rules that play to each other's strength. That is the rocket fuel. And I believe that is why, I wouldn't say my husband and I had like the best time, going through the newborn phase. But I would say if it seemed to be not that bad compared to some of the other stories I was reading. And when I was reading, parenting books for newborns and babies, especially when one of the books one of the topics I was interested in because I was very afraid was topics on keeping the marriage together when a baby shows up. This is something I was really afraid, and this might have been something I over prepared for. I was so afraid that something would happen to our marriage, when the baby came. And, so there was some, John Gottman is one of my favorite, relationship, marriage researchers. And he had a book called The Baby Makes Three. I remember there was others and they may have been blog posts and not books. I honestly don't remember. But at least half of those books were about conflict resolution over, and most of the conflicts were over things like chores, labor division. And when people keep score, it is really, really hard to create a case that something is fair, because just like the reason that you can't check 100% of the boxes on everything, you can't exactly 50-50 on anything. We're humans. We are not machines. Accounting does not make sense when applied to human psychology, emotions, and relationships. We are more art than science is what I would like to say sometimes. So, and it also makes sense to me because in businesses, right, we don't make everyone do equal parts the same work. That's why we have roles, right? That's why we have roles like CEO, CFO, COO, like different people do different things and they do what they are strong at doing. And no role is better than another role. I think that's another one. I didn't write this one down, but now that I'm thinking about it, this is so hard to overcome, but I wish people would know that no role is better than another role. The CEO is not better than the janitor. I don't believe that. Regardless of what they get paid, like this analogy applies to, I'm talking about like domestic area, and I know, we pay people more than others. And that to me is, a significantly a part of supply and demand, which is, okay, another separate video. I can't go into that right now, without completely derailing the topic. But let me just talk about roles in the household. I do not see any role as less valuable than another role. I just see what is a good fit role that works and what is a not good fit, or what is a good fit role that works for the entire system of the family. And that may involve, so what my husband and I actually did, and we do this multiple times, maybe like once or twice a year. We don't actually plan to do this. I just realized it just naturally happens. We would sit down and talk about, okay, what do you enjoy doing? What do I enjoy doing? What do you hate doing and that you are, doing right now? And what are you neutral about it? Like, you're just okay, I'll check this off. And then we kind of rejigger our, roles and responsibilities. And then when we get to a point where we're yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Then I commit to my damn role. I'm not he cooks everything. Although now I'm cooking 1 or 2 meals a day because he wants to do, he wants to do some after work activities. So I will take care of things, but he mostly prepares everything for me and I just have to throw it in the pot, which is awesome. So he cooks, right? And he enjoys doing that. I don't really enjoy cooking. So in this case, he got cooking, and I don't love dishes, but I don't mind it. In fact, I can listen to podcasts while I brainlessly do dishes. And so I like that job. I also way prefer childcare than he does. And so I take the brunt of taking care of my baby. And I take the brunt of dealing with any overnight issues with my baby. And obviously when I was breastfeeding, that was a necessity anyway, right? Because I had to feed her. But I don't actually have to feed her overnight. But when she wakes up, I still take on that duty anyway. And the reason is I don't mind. And my work is very flexible that I can take naps, and I have the ability to take naps. My husband actually cannot take naps during daytime. Unless he's really, really sick, he just can't. So in this case, it would cost him way more to do overnight shift than me. So I am now taking all of our overnight shift. And the only time I got a little bit resentful was when I had COVID, and I didn't want to, that made getting up, in the middle of the night painful, but I didn't tell him. And so that was kind of on me that I didn't speak out. And then once I did speak up, he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Next time you're sick, let me know. I will, let me know if you feel really tired. I will do it." Right. And so it's yeah, we, role negotiate. Right. And same thing for him. he does not complain that he has to cook. He has to work 9 to 5 and then come back and cook. That is quite a lot to do. On top of that, most of our logistical things in our family, managing finances, because I hate spreadsheets. I love people who know how to do spreadsheets. I know how to do it, but I love people who love spreadsheets because I hate spreadsheets, but I value them so much. right? So he does anything involving a spreadsheet. It's mostly him. And then I review it as a co-partner. But there's never a you this, that, this, because if we think about what is actually 50-50, if we try to itemize everything, both of us can find something unfair. I'm almost certain of it. Okay. I didn't know I was going to say so much. Okay. Number 5. And this is something that I wish I knew. And I know was gonna, I think I did. Somebody had told me this. But now that I've actually been through it, I get it. So number 5 is amnesia happens after the newborn phase, where you start to forget how difficult things were the first few weeks or months. I think this is nature's way of getting us to forget how painful it was so that we're ready to make more babies. And it works. I found myself starting to get amnesia around the 3-month mark, which happens to be the end of the 4th trimester. Actually, I might have even started around the 2-month mark. But okay, here's why I say this, right? I say this so that when you ask your parents or grandparents, when you ask your parents or of older kids or grandparents for advice on handling your new, what was I trying to say? Anyway, if you ask your parents or other people who have older kids, that's what I was trying to say, for advice on how to handle your baby, understand that they may paint a much brighter picture than what you're experiencing because of this amnesia. And it is not because you suck as a parent. I remember wondering why I am having so much problems with my baby and wondering, I guess, wondering like, is there something wrong here? And I know I'm not alone. I know I talked to people who said the same thing. And when you go to your parents or your aunts and uncles or just other people who have older children, and ask them for like, hey, what do you do when your baby won't stop screaming for like 3 hours or won't breastfeed? And, all these things, right? They might respond with, I don't think I ever had that problem with you. They might think that, they might say that, or they may not, basically they may not remember, right? And they may just remember like the good stuff, like the stuff that you take videos and photos of. And it may make you feel like there's something wrong with you or there's something wrong with your baby or both. And it may just be the case that they don't remember how hard it was when they first were parents, especially with their firstborn. Every parent I've ever talked to said the second one was easier. There are exceptions, I'm sure, but and I believe part of the reason why the second one is easier is because they knew all of the other 4 things that I had talked about above. And just knowing these things just makes the game psychologically so much easier to stomach, and that makes the whole thing easier. But yeah, if you hear your parents or relatives or people on the internet talk about how easy their babies were, maybe they just forgot. Or maybe their babies were easy, right? Unicorn babies exist. My baby was very easy in some areas and did not seem like an outlier in terms of difficulty in other areas. And I think it's normal. And I think it's all normal, right? It's all normal. Everything is normal, unless the doctor tells me otherwise. Okay. So that's it. And at this point, okay, so I'm really glad. Okay. So I journaled about this during when my baby was in the newborn phase. And I'm really glad I did that. Because my amnesia has already started to kick in, right? I'm like, I intellectually remember all the difficulties, but there's like almost no emotional reaction to any of that, right? And so I wanted to make this video so that as I get more amnesia, right, I don't forget, because I do want a second at some point, and I don't want to forget, all the things that, what did I really think? And also, of course, in case anybody else is going through the newborn phase or are a parent to be soon, I do hope that knowing some of this or hearing some of this will help. I do believe that you can't really internalize this until you've actually been through it, but knowing it ahead of time, I think can just help prepare. Okay. So, going back to, I started this by saying nobody should be a parent who don't really, really want to, at the risk of this video sounding like I'm just saying parenting is super hard. If you've watched any of my other videos or listened to any of my other episodes, you would know that you should know that that's not how I view parenting. I do not see it as something that's just really, really, really hard. I see it as an experience that can take you on the highest highs and the lowest lows. And if you don't really, really, really want to be a parent, your highs are not going to be as high as somebody who does. And your lowest lows are you won't be able to bear it with the same resilience as someone who really, really, really wants it. Because even though I can say that those first 3 months were the hardest physically and emotionally, for me, physically and emotionally, the most hardest, experience of my life, they were also the best. In another video or another episode, I do want to talk about what made me decide to have a baby, because I didn't always want children. And this shocked my friend when we talked about it the other day. She was like, "What? I thought you always wanted to have kids," which is funny because when I told I had other friends that when I told them that I wanted to have kids, they were shocked. They were like, "Oh, you never wanted to have kids." And my reasons were not intellectual. They were incredibly visceral. And however, I only was able to accept that my reasons were valid and that they were the right, they were leading me to the right decisions, even when they were not logical or intellectual. And there is something to be said about visceral and emotional reasons, that if you have a very strong emotional desire for something, it's hard because you can't measure this. You can't prove this, right? But if you do have a very strong, emotional, almost, how would you say, the word is escaping me. Unfortunately, the word is escaping me right now. I don't know if it's you have a strong value in something. You will overcome the lowest lows, even if they're the lowest lows you ever have in your entire life. Okay, I will end it here. There's more I want to say, but I will end it here because my baby's about to wake up from her nap anyway. And so I need to get ready. All right. Good luck, new parents or new parents to be.